Never depend on one source of income. That is the surefire way that you're going to go broke fast, especially if you lose that one mainstream income, whether it be your job or your business. You need to have multiple streams of income to ensure that you're always protected and you have a life of freedom too. So today I'm going to talk about my 5 favorite investments that you could also create passive income with as well. All right, so getting started here, I want to talk about what I might call the gateway drug into some of these alternative investments that create passive streams of income. First, let me define passive. Passive doesn't always mean passive, right? Passive actually does mean that your money works harder for you. This is not like getting a new online store, an Amazon store. This does not mean going and trying to start a brand new business that's like a part-time job. We're talking about passive streams of income where your money works harder for you so you don't have to work so hard for it. And so one of the gateway drugs getting into that is often real estate investing. Real estate is one of the easiest ways to ensure that your money is protected because you have a real asset backing up. This is not like some digital currency that may or may not go up or down. It's not like stocks where it may go up or down where you have really no control. Real estate is real estate. And so the easiest one to start with, if I'm going to say any strategy, would be turnkey investments, turnkey rentals. And what a turnkey rental is simply this. You don't manage the property. There's usually what's called a turnkey company that goes and finds the properties for you. You get to pick and choose and know ahead of time how much money you can make on that property. Now you get the financing on it if you need to get a mortgage or not. That depends on you. But when you get that property, it's already in a part of a little buffet, right? A part of selection that you pick from a menu. You pick that property, you buy it, and then they property manage it for you. The great news is this, you don't have to buy a property in your backyard that you're dealing with the tenants, the toilets, and the trash. You can actually be the one that has the property manager deal with all those issues, deal with all the lease agreements, and trying to get new renters for that matter, or renew renters, or even get new ones if you have to get rid of the old ones, right? You deal with none of that stuff. You are the one that collects the checks. That's turnkey real estate, which is much more passive than the typical way that you see people doing real estate investing. Now, I'll tell you, for me, it's been awesome. Now it's not always great, even in today's environment. You might see some worse numbers today, but still, the fact that you can not only get paid cash flow from these properties, you can get paid profit. And that's a key thing. If you're looking at this, you want something that pays you monthly cash after you've paid all of your expenses. If it does that, not only do you get that money, but that money comes tax advantaged. You can often write off a good chunk or all of that income that you're receiving. And on top of that, the renters, if you have a mortgage, are paying it down for you. Because with that rent payment that's coming in, you're paying your mortgage payment, you're paying the property manager, and then whatever's left is coming to you too. So they're paying down your mortgage, giving you instant equity, even if there's no appreciation. But if there is appreciation, that's awesome. So when the property actually appreciates in value, you get a gain with that as well. And it's even better if you have a mortgage. Because for example, if I have 20% down on a property and that property costs $200,000, that means I put $40,000 down. Well, what if that $200,000 property increased in value by 10%? Well, that's $20,000, isn't it? Now, some people will say, well, that's a 10% return. No, it's not, because my actual money invested was only $40,000. So that $40,000 makes $20,000. Guess what? I just made a 50% rate of return. This is why when I have rental properties, even some for the last 5 or 6 years, they've made anywhere from 300 to 400% total returns. Again, this is not guaranteed, and I'm not giving investment advice, right? All these things can vary depending on the property. But I'll tell you, I've even had bad properties with bad property managers that I've had to take away from them. I went and later sold those properties off and still made a 40 or 50% return because I got appreciation and some cash flow too. And so just know that this could be an easy way to get in that has really lower risk, assuming you do it right and do it well, versus, the higher return potential that you get with it. All right, number 2 is private lending. Many people don't realize that a lot of real estate investors, if you want to be passive, right? A lot of real estate investors out there actually want private money, and they're willing to pay higher returns for that private money than they would for a bank. Why? Because real estate investors don't want to have to deal with banks. If you've ever had to deal with a bank before, it's kind of a pain in the butt, isn't it? Having to go and tell them everything about your life and try to give them all these documents and returns and everything else, and you're waiting weeks for the red tape to go through. Sometimes the best thing you can have, especially if you're an investor, is speed. And so many of these investors that are actually buying and transacting the real estate, they're active real estate investors, they want money, not just from banks, but even from private individuals that they're willing to pay top dollar. And with higher interest rates, this has actually become a better deal because now there are many people out there willing to pay you 10+% a year on your money for just borrowing your money. And here's the great thing. Depending on the kind of investment you do, you could actually be on title, just like the bank is when you get a mortgage. If you've noticed, when you get a mortgage on your house, if you don't pay on that mortgage, what happens? They foreclose on you, right? They take that property away from you, even if there's lots of equity. And by the way, if you have lots of equity in your property, they want to take it back faster, don't they? Well, as an investor, if you want to be a passive investor, you can lend your money to these investors that are buying these properties, but you're on title. Until they pay you off, the property is technically yours and theirs, but they have to pay you off first in order for them to get the real gains of that property. So if they decide to sell a property, good news, you get paid first before they get paid anything. So that's one great way to do that. Another way is you can actually invest in things like oil and gas, because let's be honest, if I have to pay more at the gas pump, I might as well get paid a higher return on oil and gas as well. And so now there are a lot of speculative ventures out there, things like drilling. There's a lot of things like what they call working interest, where they're drilling and speculating. I really stay away from those kind of investments. There are great tax advantages to those. However, there's also higher risk. So I like to stay more with those that just pay mineral rights, right? Where they already have done the drilling. They already know the oil's there. They just have to pay for the wells. So I love to be the investor that pays for those wells to go in where there's already oil, and then get paid on the production of that oil. A great way to make money in the oil and gas space. And by the way, it's backed by real estate too, which is always nice as well. Okay, the fourth thing are syndications. A syndication is when many passive investors pool their money together to go and buy a larger project. So for example, it might be really hard for you to be able to go and buy an apartment building all by yourself. You may not have a couple $1 million just lying around. But what if you could have other investors come in with their partnership to all pool your money together to then buy that property? That is exactly what you could do with a syndication. Now, it's not just buying apartment buildings. It could be self-storage units. By the way, in recessions, self-storage usually performs well because when people have to downsize, where do they put their junk? Into the self-storage unit, right? Put their junk in there instead. And so there's great ways to get paid on that. There's ways to get paid on assisted living. There's ways to get paid on car washes and other businesses or franchises. There are so many different ways you can make money using syndications, right? And then the fifth one is a partnership. Now, partnerships might be some of my favorite ones. I do love lending, but I'll tell you that partnerships have also been good for me as well, because instead of pooling your money with other investors, you might just go on one-to-one as the main partner on an investment. So for example, I have a partnership right now with raw land. This partner knows how to buy and sell raw land, makes amazing returns on this kind of investment. And so when I put my money with him, he's the one actually doing the investing. I'm a 70% partner, he's 30%. He gets paid whenever I get paid, which is awesome. The cool thing is we've put in over $400,000 into this partnership buying and selling raw land, and after 2.5 years, it's paying me over $10,400 a month in cash flow. Guys, that's huge, right? Now again, results may vary, right? There are no guarantees or whatnot, but I'll tell you that I'm loving taking all that cash flow and reinvesting it to then build and do it again and again. Because if he can buy a property for, say, $5,000, but then sell it to somebody else at $15,000, and then they have to pay for terms, that's amazing, right? So partnerships can be a great way for you to work on a deal. And this can work even in the lending space. You can be a partner on those deals, like I mentioned before. You can work in so many ways. Now, let me give you a few examples of what I've done personally, right? I've talked about turnkey properties I've had. I've also lent my money. So I had an investor that came to me, he says, Chris, I'm trying to sell off this apartment building. I need a little extra cash to keep it going for operations. Can you give me a 3-month loan for $50,000? I'll pay you 15%. And my answer was absolutely yes, right? And then we did that. 3 months later, got paid back, and I got my $50,000 plus roughly about, $2,000 paid back as well with that money. There was also another opportunity that came to me where a friend said, listen, I need to raise $1 million fast. I'll pay 18% a year. That's 1.5% a month I'll pay on that money, because he knew if he could actually get that money out working right away to develop a project, he would make a killing on that. And so he was willing to pay a higher amount for that kind of thing. Again, don't expect 18% returns. That's pretty rare, but it's kind of nice when they do show up from time to time. Another thing, I've done syndications as well. I've been in oil and gas syndications where I pull my money with other investors to buy oil and gas. Here's the cool thing, guys, is that I actually get some tax benefits from those oil and gas investments. I'm actually able to make money, cash flow off of the production that's being made, but then I also don't pay full tax like I would otherwise. So I get to keep more of my money, much like I do when I have rental real estate. And guys, I have countless other examples of clients that have done the same thing where, for example, I had one client that had $1 million. His financial advisor said he can only pull off $30,000 a year because you're only supposed to pull off 3%, if you're trying to retire on traditional mutual funds. And so I said, well, what if you took that $1 million and did other things? So he did an apartment syndication, right? He did that. He put some money in an oil and gas syndication. He even got a couple of duplexes as rentals. He even did some lending. And what do you know? That $1 million wasn't $30,000 a year like it would have been with his financial advisor, but instead is over $100,000 a year, giving him a much nicer lifestyle. And that million is still working harder for him, so he doesn't have to work so hard for it. Guys, that is the power of passive income. That is the power you can actually have when you have multiple streams of income. And I'll tell you this, one last story here that really helps drive this point home about why you need multiple streams of income. Because I had one client that worked in Hollywood. If you know anything about Hollywood, between 2020 and even the strikes from 2023, they've shut down several times. His job has no certainty. But the great thing is that he's making between $3,500 and $4,000 a month of passive income from the investments we started doing in 2019. Now he's got those things paying him. He actually, whenever there's a strike, whenever there's a furlough or something that's shut down in Hollywood, because it happens all the time, because it's Hollywood, right? They're a little dramatic. No pun intended. But as a result, he can never really count on his job. The great thing is when he has that income coming in, plus we have some savings for emergencies on the side, he's okay. He doesn't have to rush to that next job that may be a crappy job that he just took on because he needs the money, like some of his other colleagues. He can sit back and empower, realize that I'm free to choose which jobs I want to get. So when it reopens, he's doing just fine. That is the power it can happen for you. Imagine if you had even another $1,000 to $2,000, $5,000 a month or $10,000 a month coming in that could actually help really put you in a safer place where you get to have more options. And when you have more cash flow, you have more options. All right, so if you want to figure out how much passive income you could actually create in your situation, I would challenge you to go to our passive income calculator at moneyripples.com, fill that out completely. It'll actually spit out a number for you to let you know what could you actually create in your specific situation today. So go try that right now.